Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. Everybody's doing well after a great weekend. Surprisingly good weather here. We got a lot of good sports, and we're gonna break it all down today. We'll touch a lot of football today, a lot of interesting things across the world of sports. But one thing you can say about the National Football League is that there are always storylines, headlines. Predictable versus unpredictable. Tom Brady continues his dominance. Predictable. He's my MVP pick before the season. The Los Angeles Rams look improved with Matthew Stafford. No surprise here. But then there's those times that you see things you didn't think you'd see. And that happens multiple times on NFL Sundays through NFL weeks. You see a player jump offside Thursday night, and you think the Giants has cost himself the game. You see the Seattle Seahawks have a massive second half lead, and they blow it to a reeling Titans team who look like they were in deep trouble and going to start their season 0-2. And then there's the unpredictable of this team's going to have a great season. But what if injury woes get in their way? Nobody can predict a Carson Wentz ankle injury. How serious is it? Nobody could say Tua Tagovailoa is going to get injured in the first series of the game and he's out and the Dolphins lose by 35 at home. Nobody could say, is Baker Mayfield done for the season with the Browns? Is he hurt? The only relief you got was when he got back on the field. But for split seconds, and for some teams, entire seasons can be completely unpredictable. And that is where we sit through 2 weeks. The predictable versus the unpredictable. I mentioned Tom Brady off the top. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 2-0. You look at their schedule, they play the Dallas Cowboys and the Atlanta Falcons. That's very predictable. Dallas Cowboys, 6-10 last season. The Atlanta Falcons, 3-13. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Super Bowl champions. But was it predictable that Rob Gronkowski would resort back into the Gronk of New England? To me, no. Last year, we saw Gronk be good, not great. And you're thinking, we have a tight end. He's getting older. He's getting beat up. He's taking CBD lotion every other day. He's not what he used to be. Yet that monster that started in New England, that got chemistry with the greatest quarterback, the most accomplished quarterback to ever play the sport, is back. Now, in the past in New England, that was predictable. But even in predictable storylines, you can find hidden gems. And Gronk returning to form is one of those to me. 4 touchdown receptions in 2 games. He had 4 touchdowns in 6 quarters played. And just like he was in New England, he is becoming Tom Brady's favorite red zone target. Tom Brady has 9 touchdown passes through 2 games this season. Gronk has 4 of those receiving touchdowns. AB has another. Mike Evans had a pair yesterday. But what can you say about this Buccaneers team? They are predictably very good. They're favored to go undefeated this season. Now, I don't think they're going to go undefeated. It's a hard feat. Only the 72 Dolphins did it. Tom Brady got close in 2007. But as we all know, close only counts in hand grenades and horseshoes. So, as we look ahead, I mentioned 2 teams that are predictably good. But the Bucs haven't really had a test yet. They fell asleep against the Cowboys, and it was a close game. Now, maybe the Cowboys will show us to be more of that elite team as the season goes on. The victory yesterday, the walk-off over the Chargers, puts him in position to do that. But it's only week 2, and that storyline is in a holding pattern. But look ahead. The Rams are 2-0. Bears, Colts. Makes a lot of sense. Matthew Stafford looks very good as a Los Angeles Ram. Their offensive scheme, using slant patterns, getting Darrell Henderson involved in the pass game. The connection between Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford cannot be stopped. Cooper Kupp, 9 receptions, 163 yards, and 2 scores yesterday. He is third in the NFL in receiving yards after 2 games with 271. Pretty good. The defense, Aaron Donald, is still that bad man. I hear all the time from analysts that, Aaron Donald, his stats are overrated. He doesn't get that many sacks. Okay. He's got 2 sacks so far this year. You could say that's average. Chandler Jones had 5 in one game. Okay, sure. However, yesterday, if you look between the lines, if you watch the game, he had 6 quarterback pressures, 1 sack, and he dumped Carson Wentz on his ass 3 different times. And for good measure, on one of those pressures, Carson Wentz injured his ankle. Now, that's not the hope of that play, but it's a fun little factoid to throw in. But so you have the Bucks, who are riding high. You have the Rams, the upstart Rams, who have a new quarterback, have new life, have, in my opinion, the best player in the NFL in Aaron Donald. And in 6 days, the 2 behemoths of the NFC will meet. Now, I said, I think this will be the NFC Championship game. If I was using my head, it's Bucks, Chiefs in the Super Bowl. In my pipe dream / big picture, just out on a limb Super Bowl, it's Rams, Browns. Now, a win on Sunday would not put the Rams in higher esteem than the Bucks in the national media, because the Bucks lost last year twice to the New Orleans Saints and then beat them in the NFC divisional round. So a win during the regular season is not the same as a win in the postseason. We all know that. Tom Brady has lost to many teams in the regular season that he ended up beating down the line. But for a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, who's 0-3 in his career in the playoffs, who's full of stats, a stat patter, if you will, Matthew Stafford, it would do a lot for his confidence to win that game. But these 2 teams being 2-0 at this point is very predictable. Another predictable storyline, and it goes with this game, is Carson Wentz, the good and the bad. Yesterday, the Colts lost 27-24. A very close game. You could argue if Carson Wentz was in there as quarterback in the 2-minute drill, maybe we have a different result. Maybe we go to overtime, but we'll never know. Because on their last drive of the game, or second to last drive, he was injured by the aforementioned Aaron Donald, like I just said. And he couldn't come out for that last drive. 2:23, Jacob Eason, the backup quarterback, had the ball. He had 1 snap, and Jalen Ramsey intercepted him. And that was curtains for the Indianapolis Colts with no timeouts. But the Indianapolis Colts went to get Carson Wentz because he was a better option than Phillip Rivers. He was a better option than Jacoby Brissett. And ultimately, he was brought to Indianapolis to win the AFC South and contend for a Super Bowl. But what has been the knock on him in his career? He's Carson Wentz, aka in the big moments, he just winces. You can't trust him. Ever since 2017, when he played against the Los Angeles Rams in week 13. When he dived for the end zone, he tore his ACL, MCL, and LCL, He has not been the same quarterback. He doesn't look as confident. He looks rigid. But another thing you can say about Carson Wentz is that he's never had the best team around him. In Philly, the offensive line deteriorated. Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, Greg Ward Jr., they weren't exactly the best weapons. Zach Ertz was the only target you could say he had reliably that was going to catch the ball. But he comes to Indianapolis, where he has Michael Pittman Jr. He has Jack Doyle. T.Y. Hilton is injured, but T.Y. Hilton's a very good target. Zach Pascal, Jonathan Taylor, I could go on. But you have 2 drives of over 8+ minutes, and it results in 0 points. First drive of the game, brilliant. Creative play calling, using Jonathan Taylor, using guys like Michael Pittman Jr., and Carson Wentz just making big third down throws. We get to 4th and goal at the 2, and he's sacked by Leonard Floyd after 8.5 minutes. The Rams get the ball. They go down the field and score a touchdown. It's demoralizing. It's a great way to start the game. You eat the clock. You got the Rams defense exhausted. But you can't have that length of a drive and come up with nothing. Yes, a field goal isn't great, but compared to no points after all that effort, it's like throwing a party on a Saturday night. It's a great time. And another drive, a 14+ plays. He throws a shovel pass in the red zone, which I hate a shovel pass anywhere on the field, but he's in the red zone. He's intercepted at the 2-yard line. 2 turnovers inside the 5 in this game. Turnover on downs on the first drive, and then intercepted. You lose by 3 points. 2 turnovers that ultimately cost them the game. The Colts had this game in their grasp. It shouldn't have came down to Carson Wentz in the last drive where he was ultimately injured and couldn't be on the field. The injury excuse does not work here because Carson Wentz had this game on lock. And yet, like the issues in Philly, they're continuing to follow him into Indianapolis. Another problem that this Colts team has is the offensive line. It's allowed 9 sacks in 2 games. Now, I think you could look at Carson Wentz and give him some blame for that because he holds on to the ball a long time. But at the same time, Glowinski, Ryan Kelly, Quentin Nelson, that just can't happen. Quentin Nelson has been an all-pro in his first 3 years in the NFL out of Notre Dame at right guard. Yesterday, Aaron Donald made him look like a little kid. He threw him around. It didn't matter if you had a double team on Aaron Donald. It was Aaron Donald yesterday. You could have thrown the whole damn 52-man roster. He was not losing those battles. And as we look ahead, for next Sunday at 5:30, that's the game of the week. But you also got to look at the flip side. I mentioned today's theme and week 2's theme is predictability versus unpredictability. It's predictable that Carson Wentz is going to come up small in the big moments. And not every loss is just on the quarterback. Football is the ultimate team sport because you can have a great quarterback, but if he doesn't have time to make a big throw, then you're not going to win. Tom Brady is the most accomplished player in the history of football, pro sports. He probably will be for the rest of time. However, every season he's won a Super Bowl, he's had a top 5 scoring defense. He's been sacked in the bottom 3 in the league. They've turned the ball over, bottom 3. He's had great teammates alongside him. And you need all of it to work. You need that offensive line to be stout. You can't allow Cooper Kupp just to tear your ass off. But the Colts have this issue, and now it's Carson Wentz. How injured is he? Because I mentioned unpredictability and the what's around the corner. Well, there's a game that started at 5 where the Seattle Seahawks had won 13 straight home openers. Seattle is lauded for being the toughest place to play in the National Football League. It's loud. The 12th man, you can't hear the snap count. It's extremely difficult. And they also have Russell Wilson, who's a fantastic player. They still got Bobby Wagner, Tyler Lockett. They're a loaded football club. And it looked very out of hand in the first half. Derrick Henry, who only had 65 yards on the ground week 1, struggled in the first half, only had 34 yards. He wasn't getting anything. You had the Seahawks, who were just throwing it all over the yard. The only player in the first half that was really making an impact for the Titans was the newly acquired Julio Jones, who had over 100 yards and a beautiful touchdown in the back of the end zone. But Russell Wilson was cooking. Chris Carson was scoring touchdowns, and it looked like it was going to be a blowout. And it really looked for a long period of time, and I'll be honest, I thought it was going to be the AFC South being the AFC South. Because you would have had the Indianapolis Colts at 0-2. The Tennessee Titans, last year's division winner, at 0-2. The Jacksonville Jaguars, the team who finished last in the NFL last year at 0-2, and they're looking like they're heading there again this year. And then the surprising Houston Texans would have been leading the division at 1-1 following a defeat to the Cleveland Browns. But it wasn't to be. It was a surprise, gutsy second half from the Tennessee Titans, where there's a narrative in football that if you're down big, you can't go to your run game. And normally, this is fact. But that was proven wrong yesterday, where at points in this game, the Titans were down 24-9, 30-12. But they have a great running back who they did not leave out of their game plan. Derrick Henry, the reigning 2,000-yard rusher, got the ball in that second half. They didn't take the ball out of his hands. And with an 18-point deficit in the fourth quarter, this team rallied. Derrick Henry yesterday ran the ball 35 times for 182 yards and 3 scores. It was a clinic of a day where the second half, they just couldn't contain him. He broke one off for 60 yards with the 12-minute mark of the fourth quarter. He ultimately scored the tying touchdown with 23 seconds remaining in the game. And then in overtime, the Tennessee defense came up with a big stop, and the game should have been won on a safety, but nevertheless, they get the ball and Randy Bullock puts it through in a field goal. But the crazy moment was not only the Titans just came back, they showed some fight. Mike Vrabel's team is not just going to be laughed out of the building again like they were last week against Arizona, but they won in Seattle on the road facing 0-2. And you got to give a ton of credit to this team. And for them, I mentioned interesting, they now have the Indianapolis Colts. Both teams could have been 0-2. And this is still very much a desperate game because with the Colts winning, they'll have a 1-2 record and they'll be higher in the division because they'll have a better head-to-head record. But already getting a win under the belt for Tennessee is massive in this AFC South battle where we expect Houston to fall off. Tyrod Taylor is injured, unknown. They have a short week. They're playing Thursday night this week against the Carolina Panthers. So who knows if he's going to play. And they have one of the worst rosters in all of football. But now with Wentz possibly injured, Jacob Eason making the start against a Tennessee team that is riding the wave of momentum, it's not an easy game for these Colts, especially being 0-2. You have to bounce back. They start the year versus Seattle, against the Rams, and now playing the Titans. Not an easy schedule. Not easy for Tennessee. They're playing Arizona, then Seattle. But I digress. Tennessee had a little more fortitude than Indy, and they found a way to win a game that they had no business winning. They were out of it, but they fought back and did it. But I meant in every game, there's the winning storyline, but then there's the loser. And where did they go from here? And for Seattle, this was a costly loss on many fronts. The main one being every other team in the NFC West is 2-0. I mentioned the Rams already. They get a win against the Colts. San Francisco put out a defensive clinic in Philadelphia. Jimmy Garoppolo did just enough, and that running attack to get a win over Philly, and they go on the road and win 17-11 in Philadelphia. Kyler Murray puts on another show in Minnesota, where he's looking more and more like an elite quarterback, and they get the good fortune of Minnesota kickers being Minnesota kickers. Greg Joseph missing a game-winning field goal at the buzzer. And Arizona is now 2-0. So Seattle, yes, it's very early in the season, but this division is going to be so tight, and every loss is going to hurt. And especially a game where you should have had, it hurts that much more. And Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll have been intertwined for a long time. Russell Wilson, in his 10-plus years as a starting quarterback, has never had a losing record. Pete Carroll has been the head coach of Russell Wilson ever since he was drafted in the 4th round. And they've won a Super Bowl. They should have 2 on their resume. But last year, they lost in the wildcard game to the Rams without Jared Goff. They've never made it back to an NFC championship game since that debacle loss to the Patriots. And there just seems to be something missing in Seattle. They had the Legion of Boom with Richard Sherman and KJ Wright, and just a phenomenal defense. Bobby Wagner still remains there, but it's not what it was. Cliff Averill is since departed. So the defense gets chewed alive yesterday. Russell Wilson is a great quarterback, but it just never seems to be a great relationship. He's got a great mesh with Tyler Lockett. They got a great connection, but DK Metcalf makes stupid decisions. He gets bad penalties. The team just makes bad decisions at bad times, and the game ultimately turns the other way. And you look, is there a changing of the guard? Because Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray are very alike. They are both quick. They're both elusive. Yet their running ability is not the biggest threat. For Russ, his legs were his biggest threat at the beginning, but his arm has gotten better and better. Where the biggest mark on Kyler Murray was his ability to throw the ball in the pocket. And yet he continues to get better at it year over year. And he does throw interceptions. There are times you look up and say, why did you throw that football? But his ability to find guys like Christian Kirk, like throwing touchdowns to A.J. Green, and he spreads the ball around everybody, to D-Hop, to A.J. Green, to his running backs. It's impressive. And the way this offense is working and the way Kyler plays, I think you're seeing the torch being passed from Russell Wilson being the best run/passing quarterback in the NFL. And now it's Kyler Murray. You could argue it's Lamar Jackson, but I think Kyler is a better passer in the pocket than Lamar is. And I'll get to Lamar later. But this division is so interesting because you have Jimmy Garoppolo, who just wins. He's 26-8 as a starter in his career. He's had injury problems, but the guy produces results. He gets victories. Nick Bosa is back on that defensive end. You got a loaded Fred Warner and that defense. They just plug and play. They lose Raheem Mostert for the season. Elijah Mitchell has stepped in at running back. Hasty is getting carries. This team just plugs and plays running backs, and Kyle Shanahan is one of the most creative offensive coordinators in the National Football League. So they just find ways to win, and Jimmy Garoppolo is more of, just don't let us lose the game. My game plan will do the rest. Our defense is strong. The Rams, you know what I think about them. And then the Cardinals. So it's early, but this loss is going to be an interesting one to watch for me, because Seattle loses a game early. That's not a divisional battle. Puts more and more pressure on you to be better. They do catch a break where they will play the Minnesota Vikings next week, who are 0-2 and, blow a game that they should have won against Arizona. But you get that break. But the Kyler, Russell Wilson, and they're not playing it, they're not on the field against each other, but offense, those games this season will be fun to watch, because I do believe we're seeing a changing of the guard where Kyler Murray is becoming the Russell Wilson of 2021. Now, Russell Wilson is not a washed-up quarterback. He's still very good. I just think Kyler's a little better. I think he's obviously got more speed. He's younger. His arm talent is just as good. He's got electric receivers. AJ Green looked alive yesterday. He looked like a zombie in Cincinnati, and who can blame him? Where they did nothing to help him. You look what they do to Joe Burrow when it comes to protection. Cincinnati's a wasteland for players. And AJ Green looks revitalized. This team looks strong. And all of a sudden, you're like, well, Cliff Kingsbury's been there a few years. They've had a mixed bag of results. But maybe, just maybe, this is the time for these Cardinals. They're 2-0. In week 3, they get the Jaguars. You couldn't have asked for a better opponent. You get another victory under your belt. You're 3-0. And I believe they play Seattle that following week. They play the Rams the following week in the divisional showdown. So we're seeing the passing of the torch. And Russell Wilson might say, you know what? No, you're not getting this from me yet. I'm still the man in this division, and I'm still the man when it comes to running/passing quarterbacks. Now, when it comes to just flat out ability at the quarterback position, there's athleticism, and then there's Lamar Jackson. And what Lamar Jackson pulled off last night on Sunday Night Football was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Now, what you love and hate about Lamar Jackson is the inconsistency. First drive of the game, throws a pick six. I don't know who the hell he was throwing the ball to. A kid in the front row, picked off by Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, to the house. 7-0. But what does he do after this pick? And I really thought it could have been a 3-0. This game could have been over early. He responds and goes down the field for a touchdown. A touchdown on the next drive. That showed some fight to me. But then Mahomes gets the ball. He goes down the field, touchdown to to Demarcus Robinson. It's like, well, the Chiefs still have it. And for large portions of that game last night, it looked like the Chiefs were going to be 2-0. The Ravens are a battered team. There's going to be a ton of question marks about Lamar. That'll be the only story tomorrow is Lamar can't get it done. What's wrong with Lamar Jackson? And that narrative will continue to percolate. The Ravens are 0-2. Is Lamar, as the league finally caught up to him, and is John Harbaugh on the hot seat after 14 years coaching in Maryland? But I mentioned athleticism, and then there's L. Jack, as people call him. He leads the NFL, the history of the NFL, for most games with at least 200 yards passing and 100 yards rushing. Now, he's not going to be able to run the way he does forever, but he doesn't have to. We're talking about the present. We're not projecting 5 years from now when it comes to a contract. When he signs the next contract, I'll have that podcast. But looking at that game last night, I'll be honest. I thought Kansas City was winning the game. Everybody I talked to thought Kansas City was going to win the game. The only person who picked the Ravens that I know of was Mike Tirico on the NBC broadcast. And I just think he did it to be different from Drew and Rodney, Chris Sims, Maria Taylor, and the crew. But sometimes one player can just galvanize a team. It looked like a bad situation in Baltimore. Alejandro Villanueva at left tackle was getting shredded again, just getting towards Ben Powers was jumping offside. You had Bozeman who couldn't figure it out. It was a rough first 2.5 quarters. What the Ravens did all night efficiently was run the football. It could have been Devontae Freeman. Could have been Latavius Murray. Could have been Tyson Williams. Or it could have been their leading rusher, Lamar Jackson. And after throwing a horrid pick six, and then throwing an even worse interception at the goal line to Honey Badger once again, where he threw it into quadruple coverage, he responded with acts of incredible, just take your breath away plays, where he throws a football while in the air, like a basketball player going up for a layup, trying to figure out where he's going, where he's banking the ball. In the air, finds Hollywood Brown. It goes for a touchdown. The defense comes up with an interception of Patrick Mahomes. They put points on the board. And then can my players make a play for me? And the Baltimore defense under Wink Martindale has not been good this year because they're missing a big piece in Marcus Peters, where they're playing man coverage or they're playing zero coverage, where you're banking on the blitz to get home. And like we saw in the game-winning touchdown against the Raiders, Zay Jones was left wide open. That's a zero coverage play, and it's a walk-in. But what happened on one of those Chiefs' final drives? A fumble. They forced a fumble. They forced a turnover, and that changed the trajectory of the game. What do the Ravens do? They go down and score yet another touchdown. Lamar, 2 touchdowns with his legs, running the football, throwing caution in the wind, saying, what the hell? We are not leaving tonight on our home opener without a victory. He goes 16 for 107 last night. 2 rushing touchdowns. And then they force Kansas City to punt, and you say, Kansas City defense, make a play. And to be fair, they somewhat did. 107 to play, 4th and 1. Chiefs call timeout. And Lamar Jackson goes over to John Harbaugh, and John Harbaugh says, Lamar, do you want to go for it? A coach putting the game in his quarterback's hands. Letting him call the play. Let him make the decision. This is not saying if it goes wrong, it's your fault. It's coaching. This is what is having faith in your players, but having an honest discussion and being like, let's do this. He knows, John Harbaugh knew damn well what the answer to that question was going to be before he asked it. We're not punting the ball to Patrick Mahomes, giving him a minute left with a timeout where he only needs a field goal. No. We're getting this first down, and that's the game. So what happens on 4th and 1? They pick it up. First down. They run the clock out. The Ravens upset the Chiefs 36-35. And again, I look at the Titans game and I look at this Ravens game very similar, because Seattle was at home. They're the favorite. Chiefs were on the road. The Kansas City Chiefs have been back-to-back Super Bowls. Patrick Mahomes had never been defeated by Lamar Jackson head-to-head. He was 3-0 against him. It looked like it was going to be a cakewalk. But the Ravens just hung around. And Lamar Jackson was the man last night. He was better than Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes did not play bad, but Lamar was better when he had to be. And I said it's similar because the Titans were in a position where they should have lost. The Ravens should have lost, but they found a way to win. And where does this go from here? Can the Ravens use this as a springboard to propel them to new heights, to be a team that's competitive? They got Detroit next week on a short week. That bodes well for a victory for Baltimore, even on the road. Then they go to Denver. Not an easy place to win, mile high, but a winnable game for the Baltimore Ravens. So you like their odds there. Then they had the Colts on Monday night. But being 0-2 in a division where you have the Cleveland Browns and you have the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's not an enviable position. It puts a lot of pressure on you to win huge games. They're going to lose games this year. They have to play. They're in one of the toughest divisions in football. But they got a win last night in a game where nobody had them winning it. And it adds just another victory to their total at the end of this year. This game could be the reason they make the playoffs. And that's long-term thinking. But it also proves that Lamar can play in the big moments. He won his first playoff game last year. He had never played well against Patrick Mahomes in his career. He did last night. He outplayed him. He was the winning quarterback. And I've been a Lamar guy for a long time. I don't root for teams, but I root for him. I root for people. I love watching him at Louisville. I hated when former Super Bowl winning executive Bill Polian said he should play receiver. He should play receiver. And I don't mind talking about race on this podcast. I do it all the time because it's just the way it is. He thought he should play receiver because he was black. Because that's what you did. People didn't think Randall Cunningham should have played quarterback. There were questions about Cam Newton playing quarterback in the NFL. It's always a problem because you're just athletic. Oh, go play receiver or go be a running back. You can't play quarterback. You're not smart enough to do it. But yet, the best quarterback in the NFL just got taken down by the guy who was told he can't throw in the pocket. That's unpredictable. That's week 2. Because I thought we'd have a great game last night and Sunday night. I look forward to it all day. But did I expect that ending? Not the least bit. And I didn't think we'd see Lamar ball out the way he did. But I can say I'm very happy that the game transpired that way. Because now it puts the Chiefs on notice, puts the Ravens back in the spotlight. But one thing it also illuminated. For years, Steve Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator, has done a good job. And the Chiefs defense has always just been okay. Just okay. But Mahomes has made up for it. Patrick Mahomes has scored a lot of points in big games and AFC championships and Super Bowls, and it's made up for its lackluster play. But what it exposed last night to me is this defense can very much be had. Mahomes put up 35 points last night. 35 points should be enough to win in the NFL. Because contrary to a few people I talked to, defense can still win you ball games. Still can. Why did Oakland win on Monday night? They forced 3 turnovers. They beat the Ravens. Why did the Ravens win last night, in my opinion? Yeah, Lamar was great, but they forced turnovers. And the Chiefs defense had 2 interceptions. They weren't really great plays, but they got 2 of them. But the rest of the game, they got run over by the run game. Just to go through some of these totals with you, Lamar, he runs for 109. 107. Tyshawn Williams runs for 77. Latavius Murray, 36. Devontae Freeman, 29. Patrick Ricard, 2 years. It's over 200 yards rushing that they allowed last night. That's college stuff. Alabama allowed over 250 against Florida on Saturday afternoon. But 200 yards rushing in a game, you're not winning many games. I don't care who you have at quarterback, because you know what running the ball does as well? It chews clock. It's long drives, and the defense gets tired. But for that Chiefs defense, they have Chris Jones, who's a perennial Pro Bowler, but he's more of a pass rusher than a run stuffer. They have Honey Badger, who had 2 interceptions last night in the playing safety. He's a great player. But other than, I put Daniel Sorensen in that mix at linebacker. I think he's a very good player. But other than those guys, they don't have many great defensive players. And it really hurts their team because they allow chunk plays. They allow long drives. And you know what it does? It keeps Mahomes on the bench. And you want Mahomes on the field as much as humanly possible. And to me, this season, I expect Patrick Mahomes to be great. They didn't lose because of Patrick Mahomes last night. But what will be the measuring stick this season for me is if their defense can play good enough football. Can they make a difference? Can they elevate their play? And that next test will be from a division rival in the Chargers. They're heading home after playing in Baltimore. They got the Chargers coming off a loss to the Cowboys yesterday afternoon. But how do they respond to an ass beating? To not just Lamar Jackson, but a plethora of 2 running backs who were signed off the street in Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman chewing their ass up. Can they respond positively to that beatdown? And to me, it'll tell us this year, we got 15 more regular season games. Are the Chiefs legitimate threats? To start the season was their offensive line. Can they hold up? To me, that's not the biggest thing anymore. Is their defense good enough? To me, right now, it isn't. The Bucs didn't win the Super Bowl last year because of Tom Brady. Tom Brady threw 3 interceptions in the second half against Green Bay. But you know what? Green Bay, you know what Aaron Rodgers did? He threw 2 interceptions. And the Bucs made a stop 3 different times inside the 8-yard line when they were going to tie the game. The Bucs defense had over 16 quarterback pressures in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes and made his day miserable. They won them that Super Bowl. Tom Brady was good by osmosis, but that's not the reason they won. Defenses are still humongous. They're still a huge priority on teams. Yes, they take away there's some more flags. It's tougher to play defense than it ever has been, but you still can very effectively. And that leaves, it leaves the Chiefs questioning, where are we in our development? Where are we as a team right now? Yesterday also, it shows you the wear and tear. I mentioned Carson Wentz. Tyrod Taylor went down. Andy Dalton was injured for the Bears in their win over Cincinnati. But how important is quarterback? Well, for the Miami Dolphins, they don't know if they have a quarterback in the future. And after week 1, they still didn't know. They won 17-16 because of a great defensive effort by the likes of Xavier Howard and some of those interior pass rushers against the New England Patriots. And they won the game because of 2 forced fumbles. But on the Dolphins' first series of the game yesterday and their home opener against the Buffalo Bills, on a 4th and 5, Tua Tagovailoa was blown up by Mike Rousseau. Incomplete pass, turnover on downs. He left the game and did not return with a rib injury. In comes Jacoby Brissett, who was signed in the offseason as their backup quarterback. He was originally drafted by New England, 3rd-round pick, played a few games there, was a backup to Phillip Rivers, to Andrew Luck in Indianapolis for years prior to that. But what it did, having conversation with my old man yesterday saying, well, Miami didn't have a quarterback before. Okay, he could be right. He could be. But he said it very heinously because his team just got their ass kicked 35-0 at home. But you don't have, if Tua's not the guy, if that's your opinion, you could be right. It's unproven at this point. But if Jacoby Brissett was the better option, he just went up and put up 0 points. He had an entire game to showcase himself, to show what he can do. No points. Not one at home at the home opener. And it still proves what a quarterback can do. Because as a starter this year, Tua's 1-0. He won. He beat New England, a division rival in New England. It's not an easy place to win. And the risk with drafting Tua, one of the big risks, was his health status. He's had surgery on both of his hips, including a really devastating one his final year at the University of Alabama. And this is just a rib injury. Said today he's day-to-day. But the Dolphins season could be over before it started. Because, again, this isn't a news flash, but Jacoby Brissett isn't the answer. They're not winning anything with Jacoby Brissett. To me, they're a very good football team. But quarterback is still, it's the most important position in all sports. Quarterback, goaltending, 1-2. And without Tua, they don't have a shot. And maybe this team would miss the playoffs and they go and trade for Deshaun Watson in the offseason. Maybe that's still their plan. But for this season to even be successful, to push for the playoffs, Tua needs to be healthy. Tua needs to be throwing the ball to Mike Gesicki. Needs to be throwing the ball to Devontae Parker. And they lose the game yesterday 35-0. So their defense, pathetic effort by them after they looked great in week 1. But what's predictable about the Buffalo Bills? That they're usually not very good. But last year, Josh Allen came out, nearly won MVP. They make it to the AFC Championship game. And people in Buffalo are jumping through tables and very excited about the Bills' chances of potentially getting to a Super Bowl for the first time since Jim Kelly was on the field in the 1990s. But even in a 35-0 win, Josh Allen did not impress me. He is missing open receivers. He doesn't seem to have a connection with Stephon Diggs. And yesterday, what actually impressed me for the Bills looking forward, which could be promising, is their run game. Devin Singletary had one of his better games that I've seen him play. He had burst. The offensive line actually created holes for him. That was intriguing. But Josh Allen went 17 for 33, 179, 2 touchdowns and a pick. That's not great. Zach Moss had 2 touchdowns. Devin Singletary ran for 82 yards and a score. But even in a victory is a victory. A win's a win. You will take it. But what I want to see is the Josh Allen of last year. In two games so far this year, I have not seen it. And I haven't seen this team play like it. One thing I liked yesterday was Mike Rousseau on defense. He missed all last year with injury. This guy was a beast at the U, at the University of Miami. He had that burst yesterday coming off the edge. That's intriguing to me. But for the game upcoming next week for Buffalo is interesting because they got the Washington football team. They have a very good defense. Can that offensive line take care of Chase Young, take care of Jonathan Allen, who was spectacular Thursday night, De'Aaron Payne, Montez Sweat, and can Josh Allen take advantage of a average secondary? They head home to play Washington, but that's an intriguing game for next week because I'm still waiting for Josh Allen to be the guy of last season. And I haven't seen it yet. So, but quarterback play is pivotal. In week 1, Jameis Winston for the New Orleans Saints looked like the savior. He's everything that Drew Brees wasn't. And in week 2, he reverted back to Jameis Winston of old, where he was very inconsistent. Only threw for 111 yards. He only threw for, I think, $150 in week 1, but he threw for 2 interceptions yesterday, 11 for 22, 111. No production. Kamara only ran the ball 8 times for 5 yards. The Saints offense was hardly on the field. And there's always teams that surprise you. And that's, unpredictability. The Carolina Panthers are 2-0. Most people would not have Carolina beating New Orleans. Doesn't matter if it's in Carolina or not. They beat the Jets week 1. Not impressive. But to beat the Saints, a division rival, in week 2, that's a good win to me. And it was decisive. 26-7 beatdown of a divisional opponent who have had their number with you since Cam Newton departed. Sam Darnold is a good quarterback. I said this when he was with the Jets. But you never know what a player is when you have a guy like Adam Gase around him. He makes everybody worse. He ruins quarterbacks. He made Ryan Tannehill look like a bum. Now he's a Pro Bowler. He tried, Peyton Manning, you could argue, got regress when Adam Gase was there. Sam Darnold is flourishing under Joe Brady, who worked well with Joe Burrow at LSU. Matt Rule, who's a great coach coming out of Baylor. They're 2-0, and now they head into Thursday Night Football playing the Houston Texans with a banged-up Tyrod Taylor and one of the worst records in football. They could quietly be 3-0. Strong start to the season. Not a story I think everybody saw coming. Now, so that's a story to watch this week, and we'll touch on that this week, obviously with the Thursday nighter. But looking around the league as well, the Denver Broncos and Las Vegas Raiders. Both teams are very good. Myself and Matt Wright had a bet about who would be better, $20. Again, I don't root for the Broncos, but Teddy Bridgewater's look like Teddy Bridgewater through 2 weeks. He's being efficient, but he's actually averaging over 312 yards passing a game. It's not Jameis Winston dink and dunk. He's throwing the ball. They're getting good production from Melvin Gordon and the running backs. Cortland Sutton had 159 yards receiving yesterday. They got weapons. Jerry Jeudy's injured, but the Broncos, they're tough to play anywhere, tough at home, but they got a decent quarterback. But I will give Ryder this. His Raiders are good. They have wins against Baltimore and the Steelers. That's extremely impressive. Where the Broncos, they're not as impressive. They've beaten Jacksonville and the Giants, two of the worst teams in the NFL. So the Broncos have not proved anything to me. Again, I think you can look at their play and be impressed with it, but they need to beat a real opponent before I give them a whole lot of credit. Where the Raiders come back on Monday night, win a huge game that they probably should have lost, but they go into Pittsburgh yesterday and beat the Steelers. And yes, the Steelers aren't the Steelers of old, but it's still Heinz Field. It's still, you got to travel across the country to play there. And what I liked as well is Derek Carr. I really like Derek Carr. I don't know why Derek Carr gets this mantra that he's not a great quarterback, because he is. But he throws for 382 yesterday, 28 for 37, efficient, slinging the ball, 2 touchdowns. Henry Ruggs, over 100 yards receiving. He went to Fabian Moreau, Darren Waller. But what's most impressive about the Las Vegas Raiders is their defense. Max Crosby is a beast on that defense. He is a difference maker for that team. They have a strong offensive line. They're the real deal. I thought they'd be better. I still think that division is very good. You got the Raiders and Broncos are in first place. The Chiefs and Chargers are 1-1. People would argue that Chiefs and Chargers project to be better at the start of the season. Chiefs and Chargers meet this weekend. Looking ahead, the Denver Broncos this week have the Jets. Another pretty easy opponent. The Raiders play the Dolphins in Las Vegas. And that game will be more interesting if Tua plays. But if you got Jacoby Brissett, we just saw how he looked. I like the chances of the Raiders being 3-0. What we know about rookie quarterbacks is that it's very difficult. It's not easy to be a rookie quarterback because you're coming into the league. When you're drafted high, it's a double-edged sword. Because you're drafted high and in the NFL, you can get a better contract, and hockey, you're still making basically league min, a little bit of a signing bonus, but you're not making huge money. In the NFL, you can make you get a good contract as a rookie. Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, these guys are getting good contracts, but you're not going to good teams. And to put the spotlight on a few guys early in the season, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson have both been pretty terrible for the respective teams. The Jets, Zach Wilson threw 4 interceptions yesterday. 2 interceptions on his first 2 throws against the Patriots. It was an ugly day for Zach Wilson, his home debut as a Jet, and it couldn't have gone worse for the kid. Now, one thing I do credit, they didn't take him out of the game, which is always stupid when you see that. They let him battle through it. Hopefully he'll get better because of this. It's a division opponent. It's a tough loss, but you got to go through those lumps as a quarterback to get better. And I heard some boo birds from those Jets fans, but if he's going to be the quarterback of the future, he needs to hear those boos and overcome it. He can't see ghosts like Sam Darnold. He needs to battle through it, but the team also, he's threw 6 points yesterday. That's not enough. Looking at his opponent, Mac Jones. Mac Jones has not had to be great for New England. New England should be 2-0 with Mac Jones just being, let's be honest, check down Charlie. He's not throwing the ball down the field. He's not taking big chances. He's just being an efficient quarterback. Now, efficient can work. I think the Patriots defenses look pretty good. J.C. Jackson is one of the best corners in football. Stephon Gilmore will be back at some point. But I do want to see more from Mac. Yeah, going 22 for 30 is very efficient, very good. But he only throws for 186. He's not taking a risk. His longest pass of the day was the 32-yarder to Hunter Henry. But that was 20 yards after the catch. So I still think there's more there at the cutting room floor. But to his credit, he wins the game. So as a rookie, he stepped into a much better situation than Zach Wilson. Trevor Lawrence, the poor guy, it's ugly for him. He goes 14 for 33 yesterday. And he's going against a tough pass rush with Bradley Chubb and Von Miller coming out his throat, but only throwing for 118, another 2 interceptions after 3 in week 1. It's ugly. For Jacksonville, this is my biggest complaint. Number 1, protect them better. Run the ball. James Robinson was a 1,000-yard rusher last year on a team that won 1 game. He only ran the ball 11 times yesterday. Urban, I get you threw the ball all the time at the Ohio State and at Florida with your boy Tim Tebow, and you guys are probably at church together praying. Run the ball. Give yourself the best chance to win. Putting it all on this kid is not fair. He's going through his lumps. So is Zach Wilson. So is Justin Fields, you could say, who had to step in for the injured Andy Dalton yesterday. But these rookie quarterbacks are not the savior in year 1. They're going through tough stretches. They're going to lose games. It's not going to be pretty all the time. But do more to help him. One thing, New England, yes, they're a better team, but they're giving the ball to James White. They're giving the ball to their backs. They're giving it to guys to make plays for Mac, to take pressure off him. Damian Harris got the ball 16 times yesterday. James White got the ball 5. So you're at least getting a decent balance. And I don't see that in Jacksonville, where I don't know if he has a problem with James Robinson or what, but it's not working. It's frustrating to me to see a rookie go through that. And you're just like, what the hell? Like, do something to help your young quarterback. And he's not doing it. But this is going to happen with youngsters, that they're going to go through parts of the season where it doesn't look good, where it says, why did this guy go number 1? And maybe it won't work out in their career, but it's much too early to say. For Jets fans, I get you're impatient. You'll boo. And you could say you have a good reason to be. You've been terrible for a very long time. But let Zach Wilson play. Go through this season. You booed Sam Darnold. How did that go for you? Did you win any more games because you booed him? No. To me, fans booing their own players has never helped. I've heard many ex-player interviews say, when our own fans booed us, it didn't help me. It didn't motivate me. It was honestly depressing. if you really love the team that you root for, support them. You love this kid at draft night. He might have thrown 4 interceptions yesterday, and it was a really rough go for him, but be there when he needs you to be there. Pick him back up, help him. And Robert Saleh will do that. He's not Adam Gase. He's been to a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator, but just be there consistently for these guys. But through 2 weeks, this season has been so interesting. And tonight it could even be more interesting. And tomorrow when I hop on the podcast, it could be a normal storyline where we hear Aaron Rodgers comes back after a humiliating week 1 loss and throws for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns tonight in Ford Field against the Detroit Lions. That's the normal storyline you get after when Aaron Rodgers plays Detroit, especially following a loss. But there also could be the nuclear storyline where tonight, if Aaron Rodgers goes to Ford Field in Detroit and Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions pull off the upset of the year so far and defeat Green Bay and they start the season 0-2, ESPN will have the biggest erection they've ever had in their life tomorrow when they hear that they can talk about Aaron Rodgers in this start for the whole day. Get up, First Take, the NFL Live, pardon the interruption. It's going to be Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers. It's like the Cowboys in the offseason with Dak Prescott's contract. They get so fired up for that story that, Aaron Rodgers is better when the Packers are good, but tonight, especially on Monday Night Football, they are hoping for Jared Goff, Dan Campbell to bite some kneecaps off and pull off this upset, because storylines will be aplenty tomorrow if somehow the impossible becomes possible. But you have division game tonight on Monday Night Football. Green Bay hosting the Detroit Lions. Now, I believe Green Bay will win this game. They should win it handily. I think they're 11.5-point favorites tonight. That's what it was this morning. That doesn't mean anything. Usually when there's big spreads, you don't see them cover. But to be fair, the Cowboys were big dogs against the Bucks in week 1. They covered, and we'll see what happens. But tonight, what will happen with this game is so intriguing. I'm excited for the game. Yeah, right now, Green Bay 11.5-point favorites. But we'll see what comes about this evening when Aaron Rodgers has told the NFL world to relax. And we'll see if Dan Campbell and those Lions, they fought hard against San Francisco week 1. We'll see what they have in the tank tonight on Monday Night Football. But after that, we'll be 2 weeks into this new season. Those continue to be storylines. Games continue to be interesting. And starting Wednesday, NHL training camps are opening. We heard today Jonathan Drouin speak with John Liu that he missed time last year because of insomnia issues and anxiety. Got to take him at face value. But now that it's open, that excuse is over. That chamber is empty. We can appreciate what he's going through. But since he left Tampa Bay, since he joined the Montreal Canadiens, he has not had the greatest grace period. And I don't think that'll continue going forward, just because he is not in a great place for that organization. He's not universally loved there. He's done nothing for people to enjoy him. So I think Jonathan Drouin is under a ton of pressure to produce this season. Looking at other Canadian teams, you got players unsigned. Brady Tkachuk remains unsigned in Ottawa as a restricted free agent. Rumored that he's been offered 8 years, $64 million. That would match the contract of Thomas Chabot. And that's what I told Ottawa to offer him. And to be, in my opinion, Brady should take that contract. And I get why he isn't, because that's 8 years. It's a lot of term to give up. He could probably, make more than $8 million the way his career is going. So I understand where he's coming from. There are worse players making more money than him right now. But if he is a team guy, if he wants to stay on the same par with Shabbat, who took the same deal, who gave up years of eligibility and free agency to stay in Ottawa, to build a core, to build a culture with DJ Smith, Brady Tkachuk, take the deal, be the next Sens captain. You and Shabbat are the faces of that franchise. Connor Brown is right there as well. But that'll be interesting to watch as we go ahead here. Then there's Vancouver. They've done a lot in the offseason with Oliver Ekman-Larsson and getting Connor Garland, re-signing him. But they have two of their most important players in the direction of this team remain restricted free agents. Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson are unsigned as training camps open this week. They will not play in preseason games until they have a contract. Could they reach an impasse? To me, the Quinn Hughes contract, it's a bridge. He hasn't earned more than $5 to $6 million. I think he's a very good player. He's fun to watch, but that's what he's earned so far. Elias Pettersson's the tough one. He's injured all last season. Got all the talent in the world. One of the most creative shots in the NHL. But he hasn't, I think he lacks physical ability. I think he needs to put on some muscle when it comes to strength because he gets pushed around a lot in front of the net. And just his attitude bugs me as well. But he's also got so much raw talent that Vancouver needs to keep him. Jim Benning knows this. But I don't think that's going to be an easy negotiation. I think Quinn Hughes will get done before Pettersson because Pettersson seems like the type of guy to me that will sit out. His countryman, William Nylander, waited until December 1st. That was a nuclear option for Nylander, but he was willing to do it. Pretty much ruined his season because he was terrible, but he had a pretty good season last year, real good playoff, and he's making the money he wants to make. So you could argue it paid off for him in the long run. Does Pettersson go down a similar route? I think he needs to prove something because Pettersson is likely going to get a bridge. He wants to make big money. He wants to be in that Matthews territory, Tavares land, Marner. He hasn't done enough yet to be in that conversation. But a few good seasons where he has more to work with now than he ever has so far in his career. Bo Horvat's still there, but you got Garland. You got Ekman-Larsson. You got rid of all that dead weight with Louis Eriksson, Jay Beagle, Antoine Roussel, who brought nothing to the table offensively. You have a team that you can at least say, we can be competitive. We can push for a playoff spot in one of the weakest divisions in the NHL. Let's see if we can make some noise here. But the NHL is back. The NFL, college football has just been crazy. I'll get into that tomorrow with the likes, upsets galore. Notre Dame has played 3 games this year. They've all been entertaining. They nearly lose to Toledo, beat Florida State in overtime, escape against Purdue. You had Florida push Alabama to the brink, winning by 2 points, running for over 250 yards on them. In my opinion, they start a different quarterback. They win that game. I'll dive into Emory Jones. I'll dive into that tomorrow. You have UCLA following a bye week, losing to Fresno State. Fresno State's been a massive problem so far this year. They are now ranked. Penn State versus Auburn, just a classic game on Saturday night. So college football is becoming my second favorite sport. It is. It surpassed the NHL for me as my second favorite sport. We'll dive into that tomorrow. Talk about some NHL headlines. Obviously, the world of baseball is alive and well. The Blue Jays have won 7 straight series. The Boston Red Sox have won 5 straight series. New York Yankees dropped 2 of 3 to the Tribe this weekend. They're now a game and a half back at the second wild card spot, so they're in trouble. San Francisco has a 1-game lead over the Los Angeles Dodgers in the National League West, which is with 2 weeks remaining in the season. Same thing for the Phillies and Braves in the National League East. So we'll dive into all of that tonight. The Blue Jays play the Rays tonight in Tampa Bay. The Yankees also open up a series tonight against the Texas Rangers. So we'll dive into baseball, the more NHL headlines, the Monday Night Football game, college football. So lots on the show tomorrow. Seamus will be with me talking Breaking Bad on Wednesday. He's doing a CPA test tomorrow. Wish him all the best. I know he'll kill it. We'll get the info from him on Wednesday, how that goes. Friday, I'll be doing a podcast with Matt Wright. We'll talk about NFL Week 3. preview week 4 in the college football season. So lots happening this week. Hope everybody's doing well. We got to put masks back on. Not happy about it, but what can you do? I can just bitch to myself here. But hope you guys are all enjoying the content. Enjoy the games tonight. Stay healthy, and we'll talk soon.